Hi, everyone. Happy Earth Day 2024. My name is Roger Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, coming to you live and direct from Washington, D.C. We're going a little early for our April show this month to accommodate some very special guests from some distant time zones. We do this show roughly once a month to reach out to our current supporters and some people who maybe have just learned about us recently. And Sea Shepherd is basically a marine conservation organization. We have ships and captains and crews out in some of the most fragile ecosystems in the world, standing between poachers and cartels and industrial trawlers breaking the law and the endangered species, things like the vaquita porpoise in the upper Gulf of California, which we'll be discussing. We get in the line of defense for whales, sharks, sea turtles, a whole bunch of different things. We are entirely donation driven. You can go to seashepherd.org and learn more about our work. Some highlights from just the last couple of weeks since our last show is that we have announced the 2024 vaquita survey. The vaquita is an endemic species to the upper Gulf of California, and it is the most endangered marine mammal on Earth. And Sea Shepherd has been in the upper Gulf of California for 10 years now, defending this endangered species. And what the vaquita survey is a scientific analysis that we partner with. There's about 14 scientists that come from all over the world, led by Dr. Barbara Taylor, who's worked on this issue for over 30 years, that come to the upper Gulf. They get on our ship, they get on another ship that we use. We've outfitted it with all kinds of very sophisticated surveillance and drone and sonar and radar equipment. And in May, from May 5th to May 26th, that entire operation will be happening in the upper Gulf of California, where we basically do our very best to measure the health of the vaquita population. In the last two surveys, which were 2023 and October of 2021, we actually saw calves. And calves for any endangered species mean hope. This is the kind of work that our supporters make possible. We are entirely donation driven. We take no money from any government. Our clients are the sharks and the sea turtles and the vaquita porpoise that our captains and crews are out there on the oceans protecting every single day. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be hearing from Captain Francois on our flagship, the Seahorse, which is in the upper Gulf of California, protecting the vaquita porpoise. We also have expanded our operations down there since January to include a responsibility for the totawaba, another kind of fish, as well as the responsibility for monitoring the entire vaquita refuge. To give you just a little sense of how this situation has come about, the totawaba are caught illegally, and their swim bladder is petrified and sold on black markets for thousands and thousands of dollars. And the vaquita porpoise is roughly the same size as the totawaba. So over the decades, the industry that focuses on illegally fishing the totawaba has at the same time been illegally fishing the vaquita porpoise, ensnaring it in these nets that they use and bringing the vaquita porpoise to the very edge of extinction, which is why it is the world's most endangered marine mammal. And that is also why Sea Shepherd is in the upper Gulf of California protecting the vaquita porpoise. And then later in the show, we're going to go to north of Scotland to hear from some Sea Shepherd crew members who are on the ground in the Faroe Islands, as well as our campaign leader for our campaign that's called Stop the Grind, Valentina. So let's get started. We could bring Captain Francois in now. Captain Francois joins us live from the Seahorse. Captain, how's the Seahorse doing today?
Hi, good morning, Roger. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's going great. We have good weather and there's not much activity around, which is always good news.
Now you're there on the bridge of the Seahorse, and the Seahorse is kind of a new model for us. Last January, we largely switched from the Coast Guard cutters, which were a little bit more agile and could move around, and then we introduced the Seahorse. So what are the strengths that the Seahorse brings to Operation Milagro and our 10-year effort to protect the vaquita porpoise?
One of the major strengths that brought up by the Seahorse compared to the previous island class cutter that we were using in the past is that this ship can carry a lot of fuel, so we can stay at sea year-round, basically, without ever having to go to port and refuel. Refueling big ships like this around here in the northern Gulf of California is pretty hard, and that will mean sending the ships to a port further south, which is a couple days away. So that's a great ability to be here. The fact that it's bigger and heavier also means that it can handle the weather and the sea much better. So we have less problem with rough weather, and we can stay at sea no matter the weather.
And I love the idea that it's from the petroleum industry, and that its former job was to go out to offshore oil rigs and support them, and now they're now it's the flagship of our effort in the Upper Gulf. So you are the captain, and I think a lot of people hear that term, and a lot of people kind of assume kind of what that means. So what is like a day in the life of the captain of the Seahorse entail?
So on the Seahorse, on top of myself, there is 2 officers on the bridge. So that means that I'm doing 2 times 4-hour watch. So for example, at the moment, I'm on watch on the ship, so I'm in charge of navigation. And then the rest of my day is kind of depending on what's happening. So I'll be in charge of helping operation, organizing safety drills, ensuring that everybody's doing their job on board, that everything is going well, and that there is no issues. The biggest part of my job is that I'm responsible for every crew member and for the ship. So evidently, everything that we do becomes my responsibility. So big part of my job is making sure that everything goes smoothly and that we are able to carry out our mission. And so that will go with communication and ensuring that the different departments are communicating with each other and making sure that everybody is happy and in accordance with everybody, so we can carry our mission as best as we can.
Now, we've used different ships in the Upper Gulf. We actually started, for those of people watching that have been with us for a while, the first ship that we had actually in the Upper Gulf was the Martin Sheen. And then we went to some of the cutters like I was just mentioning. What is the Seahorse's role in a tactical context out there, partnering with the Mexican Navy and things like that? And maybe you could speak a little bit about kind of the capabilities of the Seahorse when it comes to the sonar and the radar and things like that.
Absolutely. So each ship that we've used in this campaign in the past have had its place and reason to be here. When we were pulling all the illegal nets that were in the ZTA, the cutters were great because they had the maneuverability, as you said. Now that we focus more into preventing nets from entering the area, period, in the first place, it's important for us to have good monitoring capabilities. So we have 2 powerful commercial radars that allow us to see pangas very far away. Us being a stable platform also means that all those sensor works better. They're not subject as much movement. We have thermal cameras and things like that. We have several drones on board that are operated by our drone pilot, dedicated drone pilot. And the fact that we have a big flat deck allows them to have a really good surface to take off and land day and night. So that allows us to go out. And then, as I said, because we can stay so long at sea, we can be monitoring the zone and stay as a sentinel, basically, in the area without having to ever move or being constrained by weather, as long as it doesn't get too crazy. And so that's a great point. And then the advantage of having more space on board the bridge here is fairly big. We have space for everybody to work together. There's space for the officers to navigate the ship, space for biologists to do data collection, and to recuperate data from all our different sensors. Our campaign leader can work in conjunction and have their dedicated space here. Sorry. So this offers us the ability to be better at communicating and better ability to use all the equipment that we have on board. And due to the size of the ship, we were also able to install a sonar called WASP, which is a 225 beam receptive sonar. So it's a multi-beam sonar, which allows us a great coverage. It's about 135-degree beam under the water that scans from port to starboard widely and gives us the ability to scan the bottom in 3 dimensions. And pull out some data. The Navy, as most of you know, installed concrete blocks to deter fishing from happening in these areas. And part of our job is to make sure that nothing is being caught on those blocks and that they remain free of nets and that no ghost nets are created.
Excellent. And we should mention when we talk about nets, especially since today's Earth Day and people are thinking about helping the environment and protecting the natural world, that some of those nets have possibly been drifting around for weeks or months or even years, right? They could have been down there for hundreds of days, killing any number of species. And then you and the crew of the Seahorse, in conjunction with the Navy, spend a decent amount of time pulling these deadly nets out of the water. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's what we were encountering in the past. Nets will be left by fishermen for, as you said, days, weeks, months at a time. Nowadays, because of the effectiveness of the campaign and because of our effectiveness at finding nets and getting them recovered by the Navy, there's also been a change into the behavior. So fishermen will likely stay with their nets and only leave them in the water for a few hours. And so that's why it's so important for us to be able to monitor any presence arriving in and around the ZTA. The quickest we detect them, the quickest we can send the information to the Navy, and they can send the right authorities on site to not only deter the fishermen from entering these zones, but also to take legal action if necessary to keep them out and hopefully create a completely net-free zone for the vaquita, which is what we've been seeing recently in the ZTA.
Yeah, you use the word deter, and that's so important because for a long time our posture there was to basically react, and now we're really focused on preventing, right? Keeping a lot of those nets, keeping that illegal fishing gear out of the protected area at all before it can even get there and start placing these things. So I wish you, Captain Francois, a wonderful Earth Day 2024. Thank you for what you do every day down there. I know I speak for the whole Sea Shepherd community when we're all rooting for the success of the Seahorse. We're rooting for an inspiring, hopefully encouraging 2024 vaquita survey. So thank you so much for joining us. And now we're going to head over to the North Atlantic, where we have Celia and Sarah from the Sea Shepherd crew joining us live from the Faroe Islands. Sarah and Celia, is it midnight there?
You can't tell. It's 7:30 p.m., but it's still very bright. The sun doesn't set until I think 10.
Yeah, then it wakes up at 4 a.m. and you just feel like you're living in the daylight here.
Oh no! Well, tell our viewers just a little bit about how long you've been there, what you are hoping to achieve, and what the Faroe Islands are like. And we're going to speak with Valentina, the campaign leader, in a little bit. But I'd love to hear just how the last few days have gone for you as you've learned more about the island.
Nice. So we've been here for a week and it's been amazing. I mean, as a European, I didn't know, first of all, where it was located. So I would like to tell everyone that it belongs to Denmark and it's between Iceland and Scotland geographically. And yet we got here, we were very amazed by how developed and modern the place was. I mean, supermarkets everywhere, tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we actually wanted to do this live version out here outside so our audience can kind of get an idea of like what it actually looks like to be in the Faroe Islands. As you can see behind us, there's like a football pitch or a soccer pitch, as you say in the US. Very large city. We actually have some really cool footage here of just drone footage here of the islands. And yeah, so most of our goal here is like a fact-finding mission for us. Being from, Sea Shepherd, the US team, this is my first time being here as well. And I think it's super important for us to listen and hear and observe and understand, starting conversations, starting dialogue. And that's something that we've been doing with interviewing and Faroese people, and we hope to bring more of that to you guys as well. But what we find most important is to show that this isn't some small village selling fish in a local market. This is a very multi-million-dollar industry in a very globalized world that is still adhering to a tradition that just doesn't make sense these days,
Yeah, maybe we should spend just a moment on that. For those of you joining us, we're speaking with Sarah and Celia live from the Faroe Islands, their Sea Shepherd crew on the ground north of Scotland. Moments ago, we were talking to Captain Francois, who was coming to us live from Mexico, and we've switched over to Sarah and Celia now. up in the Faroe Islands. The reason why we have a crew there is because there is a traditional hunt that happens in the Faroe Islands where speedboats and jet skis herd pilot whales and bottlenose dolphins into the coves, and then local residents go out and hook the cetaceans, mainly, I believe, through their blowholes, and drag them ashore where they are then slaughtered, and then the carcasses are cut up, and portions of them are doled out as food. Now, have you witnessed this since you got there, Sarah, or is this something that's somewhat seasonal and possibly just about to begin?
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet because usually the season begins beginning of May and finishes in November. So yeah, haven't seen it yet.
And they usually do about twice a month. There is a grind, roughly. This year is expected to be less. I think the grind is slowly losing popularity just based from what people have talked about. There's still a very small percentage of the population that is holding on to this tradition. And so this is the very beginning of the season. It doesn't usually start until May, like she said. But yeah, we hope, Valentina, our great campaign leader, she will hopefully be able to, enlighten more and talk more about the history of it and just where we are now. For us, it's just been such an eye-opening experience just being in this place. The people are so welcoming and kind, and it's really just about a dialogue for us for now.
Yeah.
Excellent. And we should mention then in a little bit more detail that our campaign there is to work with folks within the Faroe Islands, but also the Danish government and the EU to accelerate the end of this tradition. That's our goal there, is to protect these bottlenose dolphins and to protect these pilot whales from this tradition. And I believe the Faroese government itself even advises against the consumption of this meat. Correct? So the argument that this is somehow connected to local nutrition is somewhat contradicted by guidance from their own public health officials.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something Val will probably talk to as well. But yeah, the amount of meat is not to be consumed by pregnant women or children. And it's, I think, 3 grams total a month is what is first of all, it's according to the Faroese website, it is not to be consumed at all at this point because of the mercury levels. But yeah, again, it's some of the arguments from the people here. A lot of things are bad for you, cigarettes, booze, but those are things like, I think that is an argument that's going to take time, but it is actually sinking into the people here. I think that they are taking it seriously. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And before we go to Valentina, the campaign leader, what else would you like our viewers to learn about or hear about from you, since given that you've been there for a week? What do the next few weeks hold? What are some of your goals?
I mean, for me, I think one of the biggest things is that patience. I know we're going to be showing a lot of things that are hard to watch, like the videos that we've been posting. We'll show it again necessarily, but there is a lot of outrage. The international community is outraged, and a lot of eyes are coming to this very small nation that has grown very rapidly in the past couple of years. I think they're just as surprised by the international outrage as we are, or as they can be. But I think patience and time and allowing them, the only way that this is going to change is within. And if we as the international community need to hear them out and be patient and educate and have logical arguments with them at this point. And that's what we ask our audience, is that when you're commenting on these things, please be aware, be careful of what you're saying, try to be open-minded and understanding, as hard as that is, as we move forward.
Yeah, that's true. And we can't, I feel like the main point is this island has a lot of people, and a lot of people also don't participate in the grind. Actually, some are also against it, which is great. So I think trying to solve this through patience, as Sarah said, and understanding the locals rather than adding anger to something that's already very sad is kind of the way we're trying to go this time.
Excellent. Well, we wish you the best for your next few weeks. Thank you so much for being there. This is another example of what Sea Shepherd's doing all over the world to honor the values and the goals of Earth Day, the day that we all recognize today. We're going to go to the campaign leader of the Stop the Grind movement. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Celia, so much. Be
Happy
safe.
Earth Day!
Happy Earth
Happy
Day!
Earth Day. Happy Earth Day to both of you. We're going to be joined by Valentina Krast, who's going to join us from Denmark now. Valentina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. For everyone who's just tuning in, this is the April Sea Shepherd show, where we come live to people for about 35 or 40 minutes on Facebook, and we bring in different scientists, campaign leaders, authors, artists from a whole wide spectrum of environmental causes, groups, disciplines, etc. And Valentina, you are the campaign leader for the Stop the Grin movement. But what I always like to do before we get into the campaign itself is, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? How long have you been involved in animal issues? What first got you involved in animal issues? And then we'll work our way kind of up to the campaign that you're now in charge of.
All right, sure. Well, I've been involved in animal rights issues for about 12, 13 years. And it was actually Sea Shepherd that got me started. The Taiji campaign back in Japan. I volunteered, about 12, 13 years ago. I watched a documentary online and felt my heart break in 1,000 pieces by watching all of these dolphins being slaughtered for no reasonable purpose. So I traveled across the globe from Denmark, I'm Danish, to Japan, and I met a beautiful person there who said, did you just travel all the way across the world to save dolphins when it happens in your own backyard? And I didn't know. I didn't know that it was happening in our own Commonwealth, because the Faroes are an independent country to a large extent, but they are part of the Commonwealth of Denmark. So that was my introduction to the Faroes. And when I came back from Japan, it was just natural for me to get engaged in what I then perceived to be my own local issues. So I became a vegan activist because of Sea Shepherd, and I've been one ever since.
And for those of our viewers, you can learn more about the Stop the Grin campaign at stopthegrin.org, and also come to our website, seashepherd.org, and find us on socials, on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And now to pivot a little bit, so you became a kind of an activist 12 or 13 years ago. Did you go directly from Taiji to kind of getting involved in the Grind within the Danish context, or were there other efforts between Taiji and your involvement in the Grind?
No, like Taiji and then straight into the Faroes. Actually, I went to the Faroes the first time in 2014 and 15, when the campaign was primarily run by the US. And it was an extremely couple of very powerful years with the global awareness and global outrage, to be honest. But as a Dane with my boots on the ground, I kind of felt like we were missing a very important part of this campaign. So I think Sea Shepherd, over the years, this campaign is about 40 years old for Sea Shepherd. And throughout all of those years, Sea Shepherd has done an excellent job in raising international awareness and global outrage. But Sea Shepherd just did not manage to start a spark in the local community to take on their own issues. And as a Dane, I felt like we were missing out on that, because if you want a country to change their culture or their choices, which are theirs to make, then you need the local public to engage, right? So I spent quite a few number of years as a volunteer advocating for this. And in 2020, I was lucky enough to be offered to help as paid staff, or whatever you want to call it. So in between 2012 and 2020, I was primarily a volunteer. And in between then, I've done other campaigns. I work voluntarily for other organizations that are involved in vegan activism, in agriculture, or family animals like cats and dogs and stuff like that.
Interesting. Thank you for that. I think our audience appreciates knowing a little bit about kind of how someone arrives at work like this. And for those of you just joining us, we're talking with Valentina Krast, who's the campaign leader in the Stop the Grind campaign in the Faroe Islands north of Scotland. So we just heard from Sarah and Celia, but maybe since a lot of folks have probably just clicked in the last few minutes, you could just give us your top line kind of Grind 101. How long has it been going on? What is it? How does it happen? And then after that, we'll maybe look forward and look at the rest of the year and what you hope the coalition can achieve.
Yeah, so we definitely need to have like a frequently asked question for this campaign, because there is so much misinformation out there, and a lot of it isn't even, it's not coming from a bad place. It's just sometimes really hard to check all the details and the facts of the matter. But the Grind has been going on for many centuries. I believe the first noted numbers of these slaughters date back to 1584 in the public register, which Sea Shepherd sometimes look at when we need to look at numbers and statistics. So you can go online and you can see all the way back to about 1584. So this is this is an activity that just goes like almost 500 years back, and probably even longer. The background of this is was absolutely necessary for survival. These islands, before being part of a global society and being modernized the way they are today, they were secluded and they were not wealthy, and they did have to live off of whatever God gave them, as they would say. And the pilot whales and the dolphins and the whales were part of that. So it's such an integral part of who they are. And that has been passed on even to their modern way of living. And I believe that's why a lot of people from the outside, when they see this, they just don't see the match, right? They don't see how is a community who has expensive cars and new build houses and expensive and lovely educations and well-functioning families, why are they still persisting in this? But it's because it's so ingrained in them. It's part of who they are.
Yeah, and when you and I were together, some of our viewers might remember some of the social media footage that we shared last November and December when Valentina and I and some of our colleagues were at the Parliament of the EU, mapping out the 2024 strategy and things like that. But at the time, in my remarks, I said one of the best friends of cruelty throughout human history has been tradition. And when you think of it, and you can go from bullfighting on through fox hunting on through the Grind, this cultural and historical residue that is somehow kind of given this protection just because it's been done for so long is something that I think we really need to kind of work together as a global community to bring to an end in a whole bunch of different ways. It's not just about the Grind, but it is about trying to find ways to work with these communities to kind of get them up and over this and have it be part of their past rather than part of their future. And speaking of the future, since we're on with Valentina Kras, the campaign leader of the Stop the Grind campaign in the Faroe Islands, one of Sea Shepherd's campaigns to protect endangered marine wildlife here on our April 2024 Sea Shepherd show, maybe you could then put your focus towards the future a little bit. Tell us a little bit about this coalition and what you hope to achieve in 2024.
Yeah, so obviously the end goal is to get the local community and the Faroese government to just retire this practice. Like, that's always been the objective. But I think our way of going about it has changed. Luckily, if you ask me, the last 5 years or so, we've gone from having a very strong focus on international pressure and global outrage and anger and a very harsh rhetoric to apologize for the dogs. You know that, Roger. To realizing that change will come from within the community, right? So this has become, apart from a campaign with a lot of international pressure, it has an extra element of local networking. And we are steadfast on achieving that, because I believe that among the Faroese people are a good chunk of people who are environmentalists who are in favor of protecting these animals, and they need to be in the forefront of this. So that's one of our goals. Apart from that, because that's the work we do when we're there, we're respectful, we have lots of patience, as Sarah and Celia says, but we're uncompromising in covering what we perceive to be extremely cruel and unnecessary. So we have to balance that. At the same time, we work internationally with Danish politicians if they want to listen to us. But if you ask me, they'll be the last ones to react to this. But the EU is very keen on listening to what we have to say. We have good allies within the parliament. We are working to further our cause in the North Atlantic to get supporters there. So it's really like this dual thing of creating a strong international community that can help put on a fair amount of pressure for those in power to see that there needs to be some change, and at the same time have absolute respect that this is a legal activity in the Faroes. We cannot change that. So we need people on ground in the Faroes with Faroese citizenship to get on board. And that's what we're doing. In 2021, when we saw the mass slaughter of white-sided dolphins, that sparked, again, like an international willingness to work on this. And that's when we created the coalition, which is mainly put together by international allies and partners and people who work to further this cause. And we work in the EU, and we work wherever we get our foot in.
If you're just tuning in to our 2024 Earth Day version of our April Sea Shepherd show, we're chatting about the grind, which is a traditional slaughter of pilot whales and bottlenose dolphins, largely in the Faroe Islands, where essentially the local residents use jet skis and power boats to herd a pod of dolphins or whales into a cove, where then there's local residents waiting on shore to run out into the water. I believe shove grappling hooks into the blowholes and drag them closer to shore. And one of the things that we've been talking about is generating support of local residents, residents about this effort on behalf of Sea Shepherd and the Stop the Grind Coalition. But there's also criticism from another school of thought that says, well, why don't you just intervene? Why don't you just go out there and stop them? And maybe you could just shed a little light on that, because I think that's a very natural impulse and a very natural question to have.
Yeah, I get it. Like the first time I was there, obviously that's all everyone who was there wanted to do. And that's what we did. And those who intervened and got in the water, they all got arrested and deported. And I believe none of them are to this day allowed back. So it kind of just hinders the work, right? The primary tool for us to be able to succeed in what we want to do is to get the documentation. And we cannot get the documentation if people ban us from being there. So this is truly just a way of, reflect upon yourself. Are you there to satisfy your own emotional pain and act right there and then to just be dismissed? Or are you there to create long-term change? And those of us who go to create long-term change, we realize that we're there to work. And you put on your filter and you close down your emotions for the while where this is happening, and you do the work. Because the reason why everyone out there knows anything about it is because Sea Shepherd has been documenting it for so long. It's not because we're aggressive or because we're obnoxious or because we try to run in the water and get arrested. That's not why people outside, like everyone tuning in right now, it's not why they know about this. It's because we had our camera and we got close enough to take pictures and take videos. And that is our strongest tool, because otherwise we won't create that pressure needed for the local community to make that step in the end.
Now, and thank you for that. Now, where can people find the coalition, and what would be a good first step for people to get involved in the Stop the Grind campaign? What would you like our viewers come away from this conversation with?
Well, I would like for everyone to follow the campaign, which officially starts May 1st, but a grin can happen anytime there's light and the weather allows it. So there is no specific season, but it's usually around May. So do follow the campaign on our platforms and go to the stopthegrin.org website, and you can sign up to the newsletter and keep informed. And throughout the summer, we'll work on some call to actions for you to get engaged with.
Excellent. Valentina, thank you so much. This is just another example of the work that our entirely donation-driven organization is doing all around the world. For the sake of those bottlenose dolphins and those pilot whales, we wish you every success. I know it's a real honor for me to work with you every day. And everyone should go to stopthegrin.org, sign up for the newsletter, follow our webpage, seashepherd.org, where you can get updates on the Grin. We should mention that our partner in this is Sea Shepherd Global. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with Sea Shepherd Global and other members of the Stop the Grin Coalition on the ground in the Faroes and reaching out to people all over the world on Earth Day today in 2024 and every other day out of the year to get involved in this effort to stop the Grin, bring an end to this cruelty. And that's what Valentina's job is. So Valentina, thank you so much for joining our April Sea Shepherd show here on Earth Day 2024.
Yeah, happy Earth Day. Take care.
And that's just a sample of the work that we do in campaigns all over the world with whales, with bottlenose dolphins, like you just heard. We're in the very beginning stages of a very exciting campaign around protecting sea turtles. But let's talk a little bit about some of the things you can do. You can visit seashepherd.org and go to our Get Involved page. I'm a proud member of our Direct Action crew. I've been a member of the Direct Action crew since I joined Sea Shepherd, and that's our monthly giving program. You sign up once and you just put it in motion. It takes a small amount, in my case, a moderate amount out of your bank account once a month, and that goes to the captains and the crew and the vegan meals that our crews eat and our scientists that are working in campaigns all over the world to bring an end to the poaching and what the cartels are doing to endangered species. So you can go to seashepherd.org. You can follow us. You can get involved in these campaigns. We also have just updated our planned giving program called Sea Shepherd Forever, or Shepherds Forever, rather. That's an exciting way for those who really want to support us long into the future to be involved. We also have a boat donation program, which is very, very easy. It's licensed in all 50 states. We make it very easy for people to donate their boats to us. So there's many, many ways that you can get involved. You can volunteer on shore with our onshore volunteer crew. And we also staff half our boats with volunteers. So there's a number of positions on the boats themselves. But we'll finish here, which is it's Earth Day. And it's easy on Earth Day to be thinking about the impact we all have on the environment and things like that. If you're looking for a way to make tangible progress on environmental goals, I would ask you to really take a hard look at seashepherd.org. Look at the work that we do. It's data-driven. We're transparent. We put up all our data for the world to see. What happens with the vaquita porpoise? What happens with the seahorse? We talked earlier with Captain Francois about the 2024 vaquita survey, which is going to be an incredibly important scientific exercise that'll really help guide the way forward for our 10-year campaign now to protect the most endangered marine mammal on Earth. That's the work that we do. We're an optimistic organization with our captains and crews and ships defending the line between extinction and survival for endangered marine wildlife and some of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Happy Earth Day. Go to seashepherd.org and get involved. For those of you who already support us, we can't thank you enough. All the work that you've heard about in this show is made possible by you. And we wish everyone a happy Earth Day. I'm going to go out later, and when I walk my dog, I'm going to pick up 10 pieces of trash, too. That's always one of my things. to remind myself and my friends is to just walk out your door and you can have an impact today just on the street that you live on. Go to seashepherd.org. We need your help. Thank you so much for tuning in to the 2024 Earth Day show. We'll see you soon.